All right. What's up, RSJ crew? RSJ Dynasty crew in particular. It's been a long 5 or 6 weeks or whatever that was that the RSJ Dynasty dive, uh, was last with you. And now, not only that, but my co-host Emery Dinsmore, he's having technical issues, so it's just me right now, and he's gonna keep trying to get in here, so we can talk about a whole lot of players, not just including our main topics today with Achane, Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, and Tank Dell. So just be prepared for a lot of, maybe some awkward pauses here and there, maybe very often, as we had a back and forth ready to go for you today. But it's just me here now. So um, feel free to comment in, get a back and forth going, between me and all of you. And of course, we're always taking trade scenario questions over at Twitter, X, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, at RSJ Dynasty Dive. And so our main topics today was going to be the first one first group of players we were going to get into today, but I'm going to give Emery a little more time to get in here, and we're going to do, or I'm going to do, something that we were originally saving for the end of the segment, and that was doing some quick status checks on some players that you'll see ticking along the bottom there. Players that me and Emery had on our teams in the RSJ Superflex Dynasty League. So quick status checks, just hitting about 30 seconds per player. And so that's what I'm going to get started with here today. Until we see if, Emery can make it through his technical issues that he's having. So we'll go ahead and start off here. Bring up the squad. Let's see if we can get a little bit. Let's go full screen with this. So if you can check it out there. Now, keep in mind, this is my starting lineup for week 6. So no, Baker Mayfield and Zach Wilson are not my starting dynasty quarterbacks in this RSJ Superflex Dynasty League, but they're not a bad 3 and 4. We'll go ahead and start off with the first one. Status check on Anthony Richardson, who just went on IR. The big thing with Richardson, it seems like this guy is just probably going to have to bulk up during the offseason. That's probably the big thing. I feel like I've seen enough to make me feel comfortable about probably the biggest issue he had coming into the pros, which was, can he perform in the short and intermediate passing game? His stats still aren't great, but this guy's a rookie, and he showed flashes of it. And at this point, if he can show flashes of playing in that short and intermediate game, I'm comfortable moving forward with Anthony Richardson. Now, as far as how he can avoid these injury problems going forward, let's say hypothetically this dude does bulk up. He puts on some weight after the 2023 season. Well, I know he came in and he was the most athletic quarterback we'd ever seen, or at least the ones that we were keeping track of, right? For however many decades. Well, if he puts on some weight, let's say, for the sake of argument, it takes him from like the most athletic quarterback to the 5th, even the 10th most athletic quarterback we've ever seen. I'm comfortable taking that quote unquote downgrade if it means that Anthony Richardson can stay healthier throughout his career. So not really worried about Richardson. At this point, as far as if you want to say buy, sell, or hold, I'm still calling him a hold. If you already invested in him, why not hang on to him? And that's going to be the running theme with a lot of these players. Similar thing with Jordan Love. Jordan Love wasn't set to, set the world on fire. Once he came into the starting role, he hasn't put up bad fantasy numbers, but he's looked like a guy in his first year starting. So I'm not really worried about him either. It's another wait and see guy. If you get somebody, I wouldn't expect to sell high after any of the weeks that Jordan Love has had. So again, seems like a guy to kind of hold this whole entire team that I kind of put together in the offseason was more of a wait and see kind of team. You see, there was no 2024 draft capital, nothing, no draft picks till 2025. I was getting young guys for value that I was going to sit on this team probably for a couple years and, reassess by the time the 25 draft class came around and see which direction I needed to go with it. So Anthony Richardson through 5 weeks falls under that category. Same thing with Jordan Love. Those are the two guys I'm building around for the future. But if we want to talk about Baker Mayfield and how he's taking better care of the ball, it seems like he's making better decisions. And if you were able to get him cheap, say during the off season or last season, the Buccaneers have been successful. So there is this shot that the Bucs might not move on from Baker Mayfield next season or maybe 1 or 2 seasons after that. Like I'm not ruling out the possibility that Baker is in a Buccaneers uniform for multiple years. So congratulations if you got him cheap over the offseason. That's probably not happening now. If the Bucs are a winning team, if the Bucs are a playoff team, it's always a little bit possible that Baker, he's one of these guys that if he got his shit together, which, based on the first 5 weeks, if he continues playing like he does, might fall into that category of really just becoming maybe a fully mature player and really coming into his own, knowing his limitations and emphasizing his strengths, not getting too wild with his decision making and setting him back again. There's a shot that Baker Mayfield could still be a starting quarterback for a while in the NFL, maybe with the Buccaneers, maybe with somebody else. I mean, so if you got him for cheap, congratulations. If you had him already and you probably weren't able to sell him for cheap, you still got somebody who's as a QB2, he could still be serviceable enough right now, I think. But I don't think anybody went into the season considering him really a QB2. He was probably your QB3, and he seems like a great QB3 to have, basically. As we go into the running backs on this squad, Breece Hall, what all really is there to say? He did what I think basically everybody expected him to do against the Broncos, put up 177 yards rushing, not on a snap count. Looks like he's back. Nothing surprising with this guy. So I'll go ahead and move on to J.K. Dobbins. Drop it in on the Pat McAfee show. Working that Achilles, getting it back to good health. When it comes to J.K., I am admittedly doing a lot of watching of Cam Akers, even though that can be, it's not a straight up numbers thing. It's more the eye test, I think. He's really the only kind of real-time reference that we have right now as far as somebody who had a lot of potential going in, coming into the league. He wasn't really like we had James Robinson tear his Achilles before, Marlon Mack. These guys didn't have the potential of a Cam Akers. So I would say that the JK, even through all the injuries, when he's out there, he especially before the Achilles, he had more potential than Cam Akers. This is going to be tricky. Still kind of consider J.K. Dobbins a hold. If you can sell high, if you got somebody in your league that thinks this guy could come back, real close to 100%, and he's willing to pay that trade value, maybe you push the button there. But for the sake of argument, let's say J.K. Dobbins comes back 90% J.K. Dobbins. I still think he should be the best running back on the Ravens roster, assuming they don't add anybody next offseason. 90% J.K. Dobbins still seems like a starting running back to me, and someone who could still potentially take on a primary running back workload. If he's still a Raven, maybe they'll dial it back. Maybe they'll try to go for an even split. Too early to tell. But JK is a real wild card here, and somebody who I'm betting on comes back at about 90%. But the wonders of modern medicine. These injuries are getting better all the time. Achilles used to be a career ender, and we do see Cam Akers out there at least getting some work with the Vikings. So, we'll see. We'll see with JK. But if he's back next year with the Ravens, looking like he's going to be the front guy in that backfield, I'll still throw him out there. It would be nice to get, some RB2 production out of JK. But again, real early to tell. For the most part, I'm calling him a hold. Definitely I wouldn't sell low on him just because of the potential that's still there. With even the last few years, we've seen players come back, running backs come back after Achilles injuries, and it seems like medical science is getting better with that particular injury, and maybe we'll see it that much more, just a little bit better when J.K. Dobbins comes back. Let's hit up Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams looks like he's going to be back in week 6, and if you got Jaleel McLaughlin, sweet. You probably got him off the waiver wire. He probably didn't cost you anything. If you got him early, he had signs during the offseason that he could be like say Javonte wasn't there. Jaleel McLaughlin has the size and kind of the profile of a guy who could have came in and could have been like a Phillip Lindsay. Maybe put up a couple 1,000-yard rushing seasons, an undersized running back, but it seems like the guy has that dog in him. Seems like Jaleel is that kind of guy. So now that Javonte's back, Javonte Williams, this isn't Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman splitting the backfield. I still think Javonte is going to be your primary guy. Maybe Jaleel's earned himself some more looks, but Jaleel definitely seems like the handcuff here moving forward, and not just the handcuff, but Javonte's been injured a lot so far throughout his career. So, Jaleel looks like a guy who could potentially be in your starting lineups for what, like 3, 4, 5 weeks maybe. We'll just have to see how maybe, Javonte can get over the injury bug a little bit here moving forward the rest of the season. But definitely a good find if you didn't have to pay anything to get Jaleel McLaughlin on your roster before the season started or before he kind of had his little game here with Javonte out. Jerome Ford looked okay against the Titans. He had the Titans going up in week 3 with a tough run defense. He had Dorian Thompson-Robinson starting against the Ravens, so the whole offense was just kind of shot that game, and now they get San Francisco with apparently P.J. Walker's going to start that game. So it's tough to get a real beat on Jerome Ford through his first few weeks starting. As far as what he could be, say Nick Chubb comes back next year, Ford's your RB2 again, and what's that look like? And his limited action we saw against the Steelers, he looked like he could be that kind of top 12 handcuff kind of back. You just don't know what it's going to be when Nick Chubb comes back next season. How much is the split going to be? Are they going to dial it back with the Browns coaching staff? Are they going to dial back Chubb's workload? Tough call. So another kind of wild card here. Probably better off to hold again. It's just a lot of these guys are kind of having the same kind of profile here. Marquise Brown, another guy we're going to have to wait and see what kind of quarterback situation they have going into next season. Josh Dobbs has outperformed his expectations so far, and it looks like Marquise is still the alpha wide receiver there. Another guy when I traded for him this past off season, I was betting on no matter what the quarterback situation looked like for the Cardinals next year, that Marquise Brown was going to be there. And so we'll see what happens with that. I know you got Michael Wilson, who had his good game. He had 7 catches, 7 targets, and so you can't totally rule out Michael Wilson becoming more the alpha. I still think it's more likely that Marquise is that guy moving forward into 2024. So another guy to just kind of hang on to, and hopefully wait for bigger and better things out of him next year. Rashad Bateman is a guy who knows how to not do himself any favors. And such limited work that he's getting with Zay Flowers coming right out of the gate and seeing production and seeing utilization, Rashad Bateman really needed to take advantage of everything that was coming to him. And against the Steelers, he did the exact opposite. So the drop issues are now forefront of the conversation once again for Rashad Bateman. So this is a tough one for anybody who was like myself, kind of looking at him and thinking he could be a sleeper this season. It's a long year. Could still turn it around. Could still get a higher target share that he's gotten so far. That whole Ravens-Steelers game, the Ravens offense, so many drops. That was just it was weird to watch them just totally give that game away against Pittsburgh. So games like that aren't, I mean, they're not really going to be the norm. So, kind of take that entire offense as a little bit of an anomaly that week, come back to probably the end of the year and just another wait and see guy with Rashad to see if he can take advantage of opportunities, but he's running out of them, and he's getting on the verge of being somebody who's just going to be, somebody who the Ravens are going to replace at some point here. When you talk about Kadarius Toney, this one's a little weird because it seems like you watch the Chiefs-Vikings game and Toney his profile is pretty set. He's a guy that works best when he's given the ball in space, and the Chiefs weren't really able to do that against the Vikings this past week. But here's a guy who's seeing 3.8 targets a game on average, but his average snap share is still in the 20% to like 25% range. So another one of these wild cards that I've invested in. It seems like whenever I see anybody run the wide receiver screen, it always seems like that play has such a potential for disaster, and it just seems like it does more harm than good. But maybe that's just me holding my breath every time there's a team I'm rooting for using that play, and you see the ball go right away from the quarterback's arms, halfway across the field. You can see the defenders honing in on the ball, and that's I've seen that turn into 2-yard losses just, I feel like, all the time. That was one of those plays that you saw them run for Toney in the Chiefs-Vikings game, and I just sit there and be like, this is Andy Reid. We've seen bad coaching staffs, bad offensive play calling with the Giants. I feel like be able to scheme open space looks for Kadarius Toney better than the Chiefs have, and maybe that's recency bias with this past week. But another guy I've seen that with again is Elijah Moore. Week 3 against the Titans, what did he have? 9 catches for 40 yards? It's because they were getting the ball to him short and try to make him, give him a chance to make some yards out of it after the catch. But again, the space wasn't there. As soon as he caught the ball, there were defenders right there. So, maybe we saw Deshaun Watson kind of come more into his own against the Titans. If he comes back and his shoulder can come back to 100%, whatever's going on there. There was some speculation that Elijah Moore might get started to be used more as a traditional wide receiver. Speculation at this point. We're going to have to see it to believe it, probably. I know Kevin Stefanski has had a lot of criticism for his play calling during his Browns tenure. And so we'll see how that dynamic goes moving forward. They were doing more. I know they were doing more empty backfield looks because that's what Deshaun Watson was kind of comfortable with, was that kind of setup. And you saw it kind of culminate against the Titans. Such a small sample size. Would have been nice to see in week 4. Would really be nice to see against the 49ers, just to get that real test against one of the best, teams, one of the best defenses in the league, to really know what this Cleveland offense is about presently and kind of moving forward. I still have some hope for Elijah Moore that the offense can continue to kind of grow. They invested a second-round pick in this guy. Here's another guy who I'm calling a hold. I don't imagine anybody's trading anything real crazy to get a guy like that, and you don't really have much of a choice. Just another wait and see. Marvin Mims hasn't really been utilized in the Denver offense yet. Not a lot of snaps. Not really sure if that's going to change. He's getting outsnapped by Brandon Johnson. So I can't really say I can't speak for Sean Payton's logic or that offensive coaching staff's logic here. Maybe it's just taking a minute for Marvin to get up to speed to the pro game, to the pro playbook, whatever. The guy's another hold. The guy still has a lot of potential to be one of the top two starting wide receivers for the Broncos, no matter what their situation ends up being down the road, whether they stay with Russell Wilson or completely blow the thing up like we're starting to hear now that might happen. Maybe Randy Gregory is the first piece that just starts a complete rebuild. It's a little chaotic in Denver right now. Still, Mims, the talent I think is just there, and he could be a guy. He could be one of those guys. There used to be the third-year wide receiver breakout used to be a common thing before Jamar came in here, before Justin Jefferson came in here, really. That can still happen. Mims could be one of those guys. Guess what? Another hold, another wait-and-see guy for me. Mike Gesicki. I expected – I feel like I was in a very small minority when I had hope for Mike Gesicki going into New England, going into with his old college coach and Bill O'Brien. We've seen the elite athleticism, praised for his route running ever since he got into the pros. I'm not sure. I expected the Patriots offense in general to be better this season. And we saw a good chunk of where those expectations fell short against the Saints. Not really sure what to make of the Patriots offense in general right now, or Mac Jones, or what direction that this team's going to be headed. So a little unfortunate, kind of for the entire offense, really. But speaking just with Gesicki and Hunter Henry, I was hoping Gesicki could be more the receiving tight end. It looks like Hunter Henry has been able to take most of that work pretty seamlessly. So Gesicki hasn't been on the field a ton. And moving forward, personally, I'm going to hang on to him because you're getting pennies on the dollar for Gesicki now. So that's about all that needs to be said about that. David Njoku is somebody that all these guys keep feeling like wait and see to me. Just talking about Cleveland and their offense, the passing game in particular, starting to find a real groove against Tennessee before you had Deshaun's shoulder happen. So, here's another guy, Njoku, like Gesicki, another real just ultra-athletic tight end. And just with the potential that comes with that profile of tight end, it just kind of needs a spark before you've got yourself an arguably top 6 guy at the position at a very barren position, where if you don't have one of these top 4 or 5 guys, you're almost in a spot where you might as well stream tight ends. And if we're talking about a dynasty league, clearly you can't really do that, So an unfortunate scenario just in general when we're talking about dynasty. And if you don't have one of these top 4 guys, you're just kind of shooting darts, For me, Njoku has been a dart. Gesicki's been a dart. My starting tight end now is Logan Thomas, a guy who at the beginning before the season started, I put up on the trading block for $1. Somebody give me $1 FOB, just so I got $1 more than everybody else going into the season. That's all I really wanted. And nobody would do it. And I dropped him. Ended up picking him back up. He's my most productive tight end. So unfortunately, at a position like tight end, I'm in a position now where I don't have one of those top 4 guys, and so it's just kind of can turn into a carousel like that. But that's about enough for the status checks, and so looks like it's still going to be me here. Gave Emery a little time to join us. Looks like he's still having those technical issues. We're going to dive into Achane. So with these 4 guys, Achane, Kyren Williams, Nacua, and Tank Dell. Well, with 3 of them. Not Kyren, but the other 3. After 4 weeks of the season, I had questions about the other 3. When else have we seen rookies have this kind of production? And who were they? How similar was the production? And, I went back to 2018, so we could see, if any of these guys turned it into long careers or turn into busts. So when we start off with Achane, all 3 of these guys, not named Kyren, I went back and checked out rookie production through 4 weeks to see who else had broken out. Now with Achane, I know you had that 50 burger against the Broncos, right? So yeah, anomaly. But here's a guy who really didn't see the field the first couple of weeks either. So yes, he's on IR now for a little bit. So unfortunately, we don't have more immediate confirmation of what this guy can be long term. We've still got to wait on that for a little while now. But it was nice. He still had even after the Broncos game, he put up 20 plus fantasy points. He still had a crazy good game last week. I can't remember the exact stats. It was another one of those. It was like another 10 yards a rush kind of game. But through 4 weeks, he was the RB3 in half PPR. The closest ones I could find going back to 2018 were Saquon Barkley as the RB5 through 4 weeks in 2018. He had James Robinson as an undrafted rookie with the Jaguars. He was the RB6 through 4 weeks. And in 2021, you had Najee Harris and all that volume that came with him being the RB7 through 4 weeks. And then we had some guys who I went through, if they made the RB2 range, I included them here too. So, you can't really, James Robinson, he's kind of a tough one to gauge as far as what he could have been without his Achilles injury. Because it seemed like at the time the Jaguars were blowing that thing up. So it's a tough call. When we get into the RB2 range, we see some more natural kind of busts there. We have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I'll go ahead and call a bust. I know his career isn't set in stone yet, but I think at this point, if I had to guess, I'm going to call him a bust. Antonio Gibson, I'm going to call him a bust too. He really, I still, once again, we had like a new play caller and Eric Bieniemy coming in to Washington, and start the hype train up again about how he could help Antonio Gibson break out and have a great season and stuff. And we see how that's been going through 5 weeks. So again, another guy whose career isn't set in stone, but it's not looking good for Antonio Gibson. Had Damian Pierce, who, yeah, he's struggling this year, but that might be an offensive line thing. I know C.J. Stroud has been able to be successful in spite of the offensive line. I don't know if we can really blame Damian Pierce for not being real good with the state of that line, but so we got a good variety going on to compare with Achane, but the fact remains that Achane is still the most productive out of all these guys. He's most productive. He's more productive than Saquon coming out of the gate, more productive than Jonathan Taylor, than Josh Jacobs, than Breece Hall coming out of the gate. And we're seeing this Dolphins offense be compared to like the second coming of the greatest show on turf. And so, Mostert's older. Wilson is older, Jeff Wilson. And, moving forward, will they bring another guy or two into that backfield and, not give Achane a real full workload or a primary workload? Maybe he'll see like 50%. That could still happen. But at this point, it's really tough to consider him like, I don't want to say a set in stone like RB1, but we've seen what kind of production can happen with this offense now that we're a few years into Mike McDaniel and his scheme and getting the guys he wants all that speed with all these guys. If Tyreek Hill retires after the 2025 season, like he was talking about, I still feel like that front office is still going to prioritize bringing in a guy who has speed. Thank you. Awkward pause incoming. Thank you, Tunes, for letting me know. I didn't change the bottom banner down there. All right, so if you ended up getting Achane, what about the end of the first round of your rookie drafts? It's tough to see the kind of production. I'm not going to expect any kind of 50 burger ever again out of Devon Achane. But even on limited touches, I don't know how many of these kind of 10 yards of rush games that we're going to see this year. Not just this year, but moving forward. I mean, there could be a handful of them. I think this is kind of unprecedented territory, or at least one that we haven't seen in a long time with what's going on in Miami. And so there was a little bit of caution going in with a guy like Achane, who's a smaller back, and just kind of knowing that he was probably going to get limited touches, probably over the course of his career. But a big reason I was into JK during the offseason, J.K. Dobbins, was that he was able to so often hit like that 6 yards a carry range for stretches when he was healthy. And I think a lot of that was the way the Ravens ran their offense and sort of helped enable that kind of thing to happen. Same thing with Gus Edwards. Here's a guy that you've all probably seen the stats. Getting 5 yards of carry over the course of his career, getting like same as like elites in this game. Something that was most likely enabled by the way the Ravens schemed things, and now we're seeing that in Miami. It's like a step further. It's got to be exciting to have Achane right now, even though he just went on IR. I can't imagine moving forward what the guys kind of sell high trade value is going to be. And you're not buying low on them anymore, definitely. So if you got them, congratulations. That's all I can really say. You got a good piece, and hopefully, if he was the last piece between like turning your team into a close contender to a serious contender, then you really fell into a good spot. I feel like there's a chance that even when he comes back off IR, if you got Achane in redraft, he might be one of these league winners that unfortunately I didn't have enough waiver wire budget in my redraft leagues to get him by the time he had his 50 burger. But moving on to Kyren Williams. I don't have a lot of notes for Kyren Williams. And this was a guy that I hoped that Emery would kind of dive into more, because I think he's higher on him than I am. When I look at Kyren Williams, I just can't stop thinking about somebody who the Rams are going to maybe not fully replace next year, but, kind of what we thought Darrell Henderson might be once Cam Akers went down with the Achilles tear. Just somebody that can come in and be a starting fantasy running back, like a good RB2, and somebody you're probably not relying on past 1 year. That's what Kyren Williams screams to me. Doesn't seem like he's been terribly. He doesn't seem like he's been real efficient with his touches. So the big thing with the Rams, I think there's still some uncertainty with Matthew Stafford's healthy right now, but that could change quickly. The Rams have been able to keep Stafford upright, but what if that changes? I have questions about what's going to keep Sean McVay in Los Angeles. They've been able to keep the ship afloat there. A big reason being Puka Nacua. And so it makes me wonder, like, even go as far as to asking, if you started Puka Nacua week 1 on this Rams team and you're Sean McVay, and this thing just kind of flopped like completely without Cooper Kupp, what's the conversation with the Rams right now? Stafford's not getting any younger. We are seeing such an anomaly season, and possibly anomaly type of career, out of a 5th round rookie out of BYU. And, without Puka Nacua, I just wonder how different the conversation is. And so it's sort of reflected in my thinking moving forward. Looking back over him here. Yeah, not only Stafford, but Cooper Kupp isn't getting any younger either. When does Kupp start to decline? And then what does the team look like at that point? Puka. Yes. My redraft teams are happy. My dynasty teams are not. Puka Nacua has single-handedly convinced me that I need to better value late round rookie draft picks moving forward. But how long can Stafford last? How long can Cooper Kupp last? After this season, and will Sean McVay stay after guys like Stafford and Kupp decline? If he can't scheme himself a successful offense by whoever the Rams bring in, after those guys, is McVay going to stick around? And the other question that you got to ask is, will defenses adjust? So far, we've seen one game with Nacua and Kupp both in there, and they were both successful in fantasy. I don't think anybody should be surprised by that, mainly because if you look back, if we're doing the same thing with Puka that that I was doing with Devon Achane through 4 weeks, 19.9 points per game in half PPR. That was the wide receiver 5. The closest ones we have here is we got Calvin Ridley. He was the wide receiver 6 through 4 weeks in 2018. Terry McLaurin, he was a wide receiver 8. He was out one of those weeks. He was out week 4, so that was technically through 3 weeks. Jamar Chase, 15.5 points per game. He was the wide receiver 8. So some real good company. Not only some real good company there to be a part of, but he surpassed them. Puka Nacua surpassed these guys the same way that Devon Achane surpassed Saquon and all the other players through their first 4 weeks of their rookie season. We're seeing it again with Nacua. And, that's on the back of just a shit ton of targets, maybe. But, again, through very small sample size, but we have seen Kupp and Nacua both be able to coexist in fantasy through 1 year. Kind of basically, I think it's basically what a lot of people, myself included, for better or worse, kind of thought Allen Robinson could be. Obviously different kind of receivers, but as far as like just solely production-wise, kind of what we thought Allen Robinson could be with the Rams last season. That seems like Nacua is taking care of those 2022 A-Rob expectations and then taking them to the next level too. I expect Nacua and Kupp to be able to coexist in fantasy, and Nacua to be like a wide receiver 2 moving forward. And ceiling for Kupp and Nacua, I still think, is both of them being a wide receiver 1, at least for this year. That's just how kind of ridiculous that 4-game run without Cooper Kupp was for Nacua. Long term, it's hard to say. So many things can change. I don't know how this current kind of setup for the Rams can be, how long it can last. But we've seen him find a guy. This Puka Nacua wasn't the only. I don't have any other players off the top of my head, but Puka Nacua was another one of these late round gems that the Rams were able to draft, and he's not the only one that they were able to pull that off with. So if the Rams front office can continue to get, I don't want to say lucky, because there's a lot of skill in doing that. Clearly, if they can continue to hit on these late round draft picks, maybe the thing can stay afloat and very successful through Stafford and Cooper Kupp's eventual decline. Because Father Time catches up with everybody but Tom Brady. But so we'll move along. Again, if you got Puka as a 4th round pick, that's ridiculous. That is absurd. What you fell into with Puka Nacua. Another guy, Tank Dell, who's had a good 4-game stretch to start his career. I wasn't sure about his size starting off with. That was the big thing with Dell. But from what we've seen so far, those size concerns are leaving. They have basically completely gone. Maybe it'll turn out that later on down the road, his body type isn't built to last in the league. But we're gonna have to see it. It's certainly not any kind of deterrent to him having success in this Texans offense, which I'm not sure. Another kind of anomaly thing happening is C.J. Stroud and just how successful he's been able to be in spite of his offensive line, which is, succumbed to a lot of injuries, and he was still able to have success against the Pittsburgh Steelers pass rush headed by T.J. Watt. So it wasn't really Tank Dell in his production that I was looking to compare. to other rookies in their first 4 weeks of their career. It was more C.J. Stroud, who through 4 weeks has been the QB 10, 18.4 points per game. And that's kind of the standard for 4-point passing touchdowns of what we're thinking about there. The closest ones we've got one guy who's been better, and that was Justin Herbert after lung puncture gate his rookie year. Coming in weeks 2 through 5, he was able to hit 22.6 points per game and was the QB 7. On a points per game basis, we saw Kyler was better, Burrow was better. And so that speaks to the possibility of it being a little bit of a down period for quarterback production in general, that Stroud was able to be a QB 10, even though it was 18.4 points per game. Stroud's another guy who I don't think anybody would be surprised that he had some decent success out of his rookie season. But that first 4-game stretch is another special one. He deserves to be in the conversation just as far as like a special player just in general, along with Achane, along with Puka Nacua. His Stroud's production was it wasn't as much as Nacua and Achane, where they just like exploded, But this speaks really well, I think, to not just having a good long-term career in Houston, but also just to kind of break the stereotypes of Ohio State quarterbacks and how they can't succeed once they come into the NFL. We could get into Justin Fields maybe, but I don't really feel like it. Justin Fields was the biggest faller in my dynasty rankings after week 3, and then he was one of the biggest risers back again after week 5 here. And we'll see that those dynasty rankings are trade value based, and so it's not. I don't like planting my flag and predicting and saying, hey, this guy's going to be this long term. I don't really like to do that. Biggest reason why I made the dynasty rankings trade value based. Just right now, what's kind of the middle ground of what I can see guys going for. And so it's not really when Justin Fields falls a bunch after the first couple weeks and then comes back up some after these last 2 weeks. That's not to say, oh, Fields, he's he's back, he's figured it out. That's not to say that whatsoever. He's been so all over the place that I'm not making any claim one way or the other, which I don't like to do long-term for anybody, especially don't want to do with Justin Fields, especially the way the Bears kind of have been set up with the coaching, with the front office, with some of these decisions, a lot of question marks. And so, where Fields has struggled now going into his 3rd year, you could point to him, but you're still going to have question marks. How much of it was him not having guys until he got DJ Moore, and then they figured it out, against Washington. How much of it was surrounding talent, how much of it was coaching, and how much of it was Justin Fields himself. And you got a mix of all 3 in there, and it's too complicated of a question for me to say it was this percentage Fields and this percentage the coaching and this percentage his surrounding talent. Too tough of a call for me personally. So I'm not here to pick kind of one side or the other even now with Justin Fields. He's not, like a lot of things, he's probably in the middle of the total shit show we saw in the first few weeks and the explosion we've seen the last couple weeks. So that's kind of my rundown of our early risers. Thank you for joining. Unfortunately, I guess Emery couldn't get over the technical issues he was having. Hopefully we can figure that out moving forward. And hopefully it won't take another 5-6 weeks before we do another dive here. Once again, always taking trade questions, trade scenarios at RSJ Dynasty Dive on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it. Always. I could trade talk all day. Love it. But if you stuck with us, with me, not us. If you stuck with me, thank you. If you check out the dive later on, once it's up and archived on Facebook, on YouTube, thank you for that too. And awkward pause as I get the stuff back around for the outro here. Thanks again, and maybe it'll be a little less than a month and a half next time I and Emery see you guys.